Hey everybody, how are we all doing today? I have jumped on just a smidge early. It is just about 12 o'clock now, so I'm going to give you guys a minute or two to jump on if anybody is floating around in Facebook land and would like to join in for today's workshop. We are going to start talking about storm mode. That's the topic for today, but I am more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have got. So if you are jumping on and joining me today, if you could say g'day in the comments, let me know that you are there. I forgot to turn my notifications off again, so we have all sorts of notifications going on. It is 12 o'clock. Which is awesome. So if you are there, I can see a couple of eyeballs jumping on. So if you can see me and if you can hear me, if you could say hi, let me know where you guys are chiming in from. Let me know how you guys are going with everything in this crazy world that we are living in at the moment. And of course, chuck in any questions that you guys would like to talk about today, any topics or any questions that you guys have that I can help you with. Pop them in the comments. If I can answer them at the time when I see them, we will. Otherwise, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A at the end, and we can go back through and answer any questions. Today's topic is going to be on storm mode, but like I said, I'm happy just to chat about whatever it is that you guys want to talk about and things that you need help with. So, I can see a couple of people are here. So, hello Amanda, hello Melissa. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I really do appreciate it. How you guys doing? How's things? Let me know. For us here at the moment, we're doing okay, which is really good. Things are running fairly smoothly still at our end, which is a good thing. But we are seriously looking at storm mode in the coming months. So that is what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to sort of give you guys a rundown on what that means, whether or not this is something that you might want to start implementing in your finances as well. And we will sort of just talk about a little bit, which is where we might start. What is the difference between storm mode and covering the four walls? So in yesterday's, gosh, it's all happening so quickly. It feels like yesterday. It was actually Wednesday. In Wednesday's workshop, we talked about the four walls. And the four walls is a great place to start, particularly if you find yourself in an immediate financial situation where basically things aren't adding up. So if you've hit that really rocky point, perhaps you've had a pay that hasn't come in on time, perhaps things have just mounted to the point where you can't stay on top of things and you are basically playing a bit of a shell game with your finances. You're moving things onto your credit card so that you can pay bills, and you're doing that cycle and you want to stop it. There's a number of reasons why you may want to enact the four walls, but basically the four walls really come into things when your outgoings exceed your incoming, and that can happen for a number of reasons. So for some of us, it could be because of this situation that we found ourselves in at the moment with all of these shutdowns that are happening, and people, I know that there are people this week who are trying to apply for Centrelink and to make all of those sorts of things happen, or they're trying to find another job, and there's going to be a bit of a period where things are slightly uncertain. There may be a gap between payments or wages or whatever. And so that is a great time to think about the four walls. So the four walls, just to recap, are basically the things that your household, the absolute top priorities for your household to stay afloat. And that's where we really strip back and we go beyond a bare bones budget. And we look at what are the absolute most important things to cover financially out of each pay, and to try and put them into a bit of a priority order so that even if the amount that comes in is uncertain, you know which things you are going to tackle and in which order. So the things that we found were a priority to put into our four walls were, just to recap from yesterday if you guys didn't see that, So rent was the most important thing, to make sure that we had a roof over our head and to stay on top of that so that we weren't ending up in a position where we were going to be evicted. The next thing was utilities, to make sure that we had electricity, gas and water covered and that we kept those things on. The third thing was food, to make sure that we had food on the table. Number 4 was actually medical costs. Sometimes that's not applicable for all people. So again, this is one of those things that you really need to sit down and look at what is a priority for your family. But for us, it was definitely medical costs. So ensuring that prescription medications and doctor visits were being able to be covered. And then fifth was transportation, basic transportation costs. So for us, that was fuel. You might find that that has to be things like public transport costs. Perhaps you live in a city and it's not actually running a car, it is making sure that you can get to work and the shops, and that might be public transport. Whatever it is for you that falls under those categories, they were the things that we put under our category of 4 walls. A very similar sort of thing coming out of Dave Ramsey, which is where this idea of the 4 walls has come from. That's where I heard of it. So they're talking about covering a very similar sort of thing. And then we look at what comes next. We cover those things first. We make sure the 4 walls of our house are covered, and then we move on in priority. And it's to stop us in those times where things are really difficult, really stressing about a lot of things going on. And I know that we all have a lot of things going on. We have a lot of commitments, but just prioritizing them and making sure that the things that are the most important to our family are covered first. So that's the 4 walls. And unfortunately, there may be a couple of times when we have to enact the 4 walls, and that can happen for a variety of different reasons. But most of the time, that happens in situations where our outgoing expenses are going to be more than our incoming income. So I did give you guys a couple of tips on things that you could do if you're finding yourself in those situations. Best advice, and I will just reiterate that in case you guys didn't catch Wednesdays, was if you are finding yourself in that situation, you are finding that you have more expenses than income, my best advice to you guys is to get on the phone and make some phone calls before you end up behind, before this ends up becoming an even bigger problem. Get in front of it. And I know that that's a really hard thing to do, but it's going to put yourself in a better situation. And there are things that our providers and the people that we might owe money to and all of those sorts of things can do to help us, particularly in this current situation that we've got. So that's the 4 walls. What does storm mode mean? And I know that a lot of these terms are being thrown around and they sound a little bit interchangeable, but they are actually slightly different. So storm mode is another Dave Ramsey term. And basically what it means is if we have this financial roadmap that we're following, we've got this thing called the baby steps, or maybe you're doing Scott Pape's barefoot steps. They are basically the same. You're following a path of steps that you're going to implement, which is great in a perfect world. And it's great when everything goes smoothly and you have a regular paycheck coming in and we're budgeting and we're paying off our debt and we're throwing extra at our debt and we're dominoing our debts or we're snowballing our debts. Well, what happens when things aren't going according to plan? And this is where storm mode comes in. And so basically what it is it's a concept. It's giving ourselves permission to pause whatever step we are on, whatever point we are on. And the idea is that we are just going to stockpile as much cash as we possibly can as an emergency fund to cover uncertain things, to cover the storm. So this could happen for a variety of different reasons, and this isn't a new thing. This isn't something that Dave Ramsey has just come up with because of the current situation that we're finding ourselves in with this pandemic. This is something that he's talked about for many years, and so it could be things like perhaps you're facing downsizing at your company. Maybe you don't have job security for whatever reason, not because of the pandemic, but because there may be redundancies going about. Perhaps you need to move, so that would be another case. Not so much a problem in Australia, but for our friends over in the States, another reason to pause your baby steps might be because you're expecting. Maybe you found out that you're pregnant, so you would pause your baby step then, and you would save as much as you can. And this is going to give you the ability to have cash on hand to not only pay for unexpected expenses. So let's go back to that pregnancy case in the States. There can be a lot of out-of-pocket expenses just with medical costs and things like that. But also having enough funds to buy whatever it is you need for baby. So a crib, car seat, all of those sorts of good things that go along with having a kid. Now, the thing about storm mode is that it is only for a short amount of time. This isn't a forever situation. So the idea is that we're going to stockpile. We're going to stop. We're going to pause whatever step we are on, stockpile as much as we can. We're going to get through the storm. And then when we come out the other side, we have tried to hold on to as much of that little stockpile of cash as we can, because then when we do resume whichever step we're on, we're going to hit it really hard with a big pile of cash. So once we come out the other side, we're going to, if we're on baby step 2, for example, we're going to drop back down to our mini emergency fund of $1,000 or $2,000 if you're following Scott Pape, and all of the excess cash that we've managed to stockpile is still going to go towards paying off our debt. We're just holding it aside just in case the worst happens. So this is something that is being talked about a lot at the moment because things are so uncertain. If you are in baby step 1 or 2 or even baby step 3 to a certain extent, a lot of people are asking, what should I do? What should I be doing? So the best advice that I can give to you guys is, first of all, this is going to be very personal and it's really going to depend on your situation. But sorry, I've got stuff going off on my screen again. I really need to remember to turn my notifications off when I'm doing this. So the best advice is, and in all honesty, if you were to pause what you're doing right now and save up a larger emergency fund than $1,000 or $2,000, I don't think you're really going to shortchange yourself in any way, particularly if you are prepared when you come out the other side of this to commit to stepping back into where you were, taking that money back down to your mini emergency fund and using the excess to move on with your steps. Does that make sense to you guys? Have I explained that in a way that that helps, first of all, differentiate between the two of them, but also sort of explain what storm mode is if you haven't heard it? If you could just let me know in the comments that that's making sense, we can sort of move on and talk about ways that we can amplify this, because I think this is the most important thing. I think it's one thing to say, these are the steps and this is what it means, but how do we actually do that in practice? What are some of the things that we can do? So what I would like for you guys today is to walk away from today's workshop with some actionable steps, not only information, but also actual actionable steps that will help you implement these things if this is what you want to do. So we're looking at this point, how secure our income is going to be, whether or not this is really going to be affected. And if in doubt, I think if you have any doubt whatsoever, then the best thing that you can do is to pause the step that you're on and basically just bump up your emergency fund. That's what we're doing. That's where we're going to put all of that extra income, so that if we do find ourselves in a situation where even really regular payments, I would even advise this to people who are even perhaps receiving Centrelink payments at the moment. I have heard stories of delays. I've heard people are having problems logging into the app and reporting. So they're not even reporting on time, which means that their payments are being pushed back. So even situations where you would think, okay, my income should be fairly regular, I really honestly don't think it would hurt to have a slightly larger emergency fund at the moment. That is my 2 cents. So that's what we're looking at. We're going to sit down and we're going to evaluate. We do a monthly, month ahead budget. And today is actually budget meeting date night day. It is the last Friday of the month, which is when we sit down. So we have stockpiled all of our income for March, and ordinarily what would happen is we stockpile for 1 month, and on the first of the next month, then we basically divvy up all of the money that's in our holding tank account, and that's what we live off for a month. And while we're living off that, we let the next lot pile up. I'm not saying you guys need to budget like that. That's just how we do things. So today, this weekend will be the weekend that we sit down and we decide what are we going to do moving forward in April. We have enough money to get through April, and I'm not worried about that. But what we need to look at is long term. What's going to happen after April? So we're looking at May and June and trying to work out what is going to be the best thing for our family. Do we go back to a really bare bones budget? Do we cut back anything that's non-essential and just hold on to as much cash as we can? So that's going to be the question that will be coming up in our budget meeting date night this weekend, and making that decision and moving forward. And so basically that's what you guys, I would be encouraging you guys to do as well. Sit down and sort of make a decision on whether or not you think now would be a good time just to pause everything that you're doing. I think the most efficient and effective way to do this is, if you are going to pause, if you are going to go into store mode, I think the best thing to do, in all honesty, I'm a sort of person, like if I'm going to pull a band-aid off, I'm just going to rip it off. So if I'm going to do something, I am all in, which means if I'm going to do store mode, I'm going to take everything back to a bare bones budget, and I'm going to save as hard and as fast as I possibly can. I'm going to do absolutely everything in my power to stockpile as quickly as I possibly can. I sort of don't see any point in continuing to keep spending and having some of those lifestyle expenses in there that aren't necessities. If I'm going to do something like store mode, I'm just going to jump in and do it as hard, as fast as I can. That's me. I am actually going to run another workshop on Monday where we are going to talk about how to do a bare bones or a scorched earth budget, what that means. It'll be a little bit of a workshop on how we do our priority-based budget and the things that the order of things that we put into our budget and when we make cuts. But again, budgeting is a really personal thing, so I'll talk you through what we do, but you guys need to make those decisions yourself. All right, I can see a couple of comments that have just come through, so I'm just going to have a quick scroll, sorry, and just make sure I haven't really missed anything. Amanda says that this is making sense, which is always good. Thank you, Amanda. I do appreciate that. Wendy, I'm trying to spend my cash. Also, lots of companies will now only take card. Yeah, received an email from Coles. And I do, look, this is slightly off topic, but one of the things we're going to talk about over the weekend is we do a split budget where I try to use cash for all of our spending categories that have multiple purchases each month. I like to have one... If it's a once a month thing, or if it's a direct debit or whatever, I'll use the card for that. But I really try to avoid tapping and swiping, particularly with those budgeting categories like, say, for example, groceries. I, in the past, have always tried to keep that as cash because it's a really easy money management system. If I take the cash out and that's what I know that I've got to spend, I can spend out of that. And I really don't have to try and remember what I've spent on what and where and keep my spreadsheet up to date. I'm really terrible at doing all of those after the fact budgeting things. Like I don't remember to write down purchases and put them into spreadsheets and stuff after I've gone shopping. But if I use cash envelopes, it's a really easy way for me to stay on top of things. I can see exactly how much I've spent and how much I've got left because I'm just spending out of those envelopes. But what do we do in a situation like what we're in at the moment? When we think about coronavirus, how it's spread, particularly groceries. Not only ourselves do we need to think about, but also the people who are working in that industry, who are handling cash all the time. There are a lot of businesses who are saying we're just going to go to card only. We're going to tap and that's it. Not even sort of like the advice coming out is, can we tap? And so it's a contactless payment. And I think in these situations, like my personal opinion is we need to put health and safety first. So for us, next month's going to be really interesting because we're going to try, we're not going to use cash. So if you are in a situation where if you still have some excess cash left over, if you still have cash in your cash envelopes, what we're going to do is we're actually just going to make a trip to the ATM and we're just going to deposit that and put it straight back onto our ATM card. And we're not going to use cash for a month. So we are going to have to find ways, excuse me, to implement some strategies to keep us accountable in those areas where I know that we overspend if we tap. But I really think, at least for a month or two, we're just going to have to change our behavior and we're going to have to change to something else. Because it's better for us and it's better for the people who are still working in those industries. And cash is actually pretty gross when you think about all the things that gets transmitted on it. So, Wendy, I don't know if that helps, but that's what we're doing. One of the things that I can do next week is we can do just a really quick little workshop on pausing our cash envelopes and perhaps some of the strategies that we're going to use to still stay accountable with our budget, to still implement different money management systems and strategies just for a short term so that we can stay on track with our budget. Because with all of this stuff going on, I think it is really, really easy for people to, I'm not going to say make an excuse, but what happens is that all of those changes that we've been trying to make, all of those habit changing things, our money goals, and all of that has just sort of really gone out the window. And it is an easy time for us to, I'm going to say use it as an excuse for want of a better term, but let this situation sort of derail everything that we've tried to achieve so far, because coronavirus. It is going to be really easy for a lot of people just to go, well, whatever, coronavirus. So we really need to try as much as we can to stay true to what we are trying to achieve long term, to find new and different ways to stay on our path to financial stability and building wealth and all of those sorts of things, and not let it become an excuse for us to go, right back to the start, snakes and ladders style, that really big horrible snake that nobody ever wanted to jump on because it took you all the way back to like step number 2. Let's not use this situation as an excuse to let that happen. And that is something we're all going to just have to be a little bit mindful of in the coming weeks and months, probably, by the looks of things. Sarah's on. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing? How's everything? How is everybody doing? Why don't you just jump in the comments and just let me know. How are you guys all doing? Are you guys managing okay at the moment? Not just financially, but mentally as well. I know that this is a hugely overwhelming situation for everybody. I know, regardless of the financial situation that you are in, I know people who are really financially very stable and they are feeling completely overwhelmed by this situation. I hope everybody is doing well, and I hope that with these little workshops we can find ways to band together, support each other, stay true to our goals, even if we have to pause them just for a little bit. But mostly, the thing that I really want to encourage you guys, the thing that I think is going to be the hardest, and this is what I found from experience, enacting storm mode, pausing what you're doing and stockpiling is actually it's kind of easy. It's not a difficult thing to do. The really hard thing to do, and I think this is something that we are going to have a workshop on later on down the track when this whole situation settles down. The hardest thing is once the storm passes, once the dust settles, is to take that stockpile that we've got and take it back down to $1,000 or $2,000 and put the rest onto debt. That is going to be a difficult thing for a lot of people, and I have experienced that myself, because you still feel that sense of fear, you still feel that sense of uncertainty, and that little stockpile is most definitely a comfort blanket when it is there. And it is really hard to follow that last step of Dave Ramsey's storm mode plan and that advice, and then to take however extra much you have and pay it off debt. It's restarting the baby steps or the barefoot steps or whatever it is after this has finished. So that is most definitely a workshop that we are going to be having later on down the track, and we're going to deal with some of that. They really are just mindset issues that come up, beliefs and blocks, and ways to sort of overcome our fear of money and our fear of a scarcity of money, because that's what it really comes down to, and having faith that we have returned to a time of calm. But that is later on down the track. Most definitely that is not right now, because I think the majority of us, there's a lot of things that are up in the air right now. There's a lot of things that we don't know. We don't know in Australia how long we are going to be. They're saying we're not in lockdown just yet, but for want of a better term, how long we are going to be in this situation where businesses have been forced to close, people are being asked to stay at home, and all of those sorts of things. We don't know. We are waiting to see. So, do you guys have any questions about storm mode? If you would even just like to ask about your own personal situation that you're in, give as much detail as you feel comfortable with. Just pop them into the comments and we can sort of work through those sorts of things. But I think basically now the thing is, if you're working through the debt-free program, whichever one you're doing, Dave Ramsey's or Scott Pape's, they are pretty much basically the same. If you're on a specific step, what course of action should you be taking right now? So I'm going to refer back to the information that has been coming out of Dave Ramsey headquarters and what they are encouraging people to do. And I'm just going to reiterate that information to you, because I really do think that it's solid advice. And the great thing I think about the information that's coming out from Dave Ramsey is, first of all, it's pretty simple. It's pretty basic. It's not really complicated information, but it is advice that has been tested. That organisation has been around long enough that they've seen similar sort of situations. And I think the most recent one really where a lot of people had a similar sort of situation to this in the States was, that 2008 period where the housing market crashed and all that sort of stuff. And I think we can see from history that this advice stood the test of time then. So I feel relatively comfortable. I feel very comfortable that this information is going to stand the test of time now. So if you guys haven't heard any of that, or you don't follow Dave Ramsey or whatever, if you're following Scott Pape, it's still applicable. It's still basically the same sort of program. They just use different names, slightly different variations on some of the advice that they give. For example, Scott Pape has a slightly higher mini emergency fund, but all of that is irrelevant to what you need to do to enact storm mode. So basically, in a nutshell, if you are just starting out, or if you haven't even started yet, perhaps you've been floating around, you've been thinking, I really need to get my finances in order, and this has been the kick in the butt that has pushed you across the line and you've decided now is the time. Best advice is to sit down. If you don't have a budget, absolutely now is the time to sit down and work out your budget. And we will be on Monday going over creating a bare bones budget or a scorched earth budget and what that means and how to do it. So the best thing that you guys can do this weekend is to do a little spending audit. This is where you print off your last 3 months of bank statements or anywhere that you have money coming out of your account. So if you have a debit card, if you have a credit card, print off all of those statements. And let's just do a little bit of a spending audit. Let's see where your money has been going. If you have the time and the inclination, 6 months is great. But really the thing that you want to be looking for when you start to go back, after you've done about 3 months, you've got an idea of a ballpark figure for things like groceries and stuff like that. When we're looking 6 to 12 months, let's just go and have a look for quarterly or yearly renewals, those things that are sort of cropping up. I wouldn't analyze everything at that point. We just want to look back at perhaps what might be coming up in the next 3 months. That's always a good one to sit down and have a look at. So spend a bit of time doing that spending audit, see where your money has been going. Let's have a look and see if there is anything there that we can cut straight off the bat. So these tips do come out of the $1,000 challenge. So if you haven't had a chance to go back and cut the crap, then let's do that now. If you haven't had a chance to shop around and perhaps get a better deal on some things, now is the time to do that, because every little bit that we can save is going to help. So there are a couple of things we can do this weekend. Sit down and have a look at the 4 walls and decide for your family what that's going to be. Even if you don't need to enact that right now, at least knowing that and always putting that to the top of your budget is going to bring you some comfort and reassurance that even if the worst happens, you know that you can cover that, or you've got ways to cover that. The next thing that I'd be looking at is the next stage, so to speak, of storm mode is basically paying the minimums on all of your liabilities. So that would be the thing to start enacting as well. If you are paying off more, drop everything back to your minimums and just pay the minimums for the time being. That's going to hopefully give you a little bit of breathing space in your budget. And at that point, start throwing as much extra cash as you can into a little stockpile. I think the best place to do that is where your mini emergency fund is. And if you don't have a mini emergency fund yet, my advice to you is to set up a dedicated online account. Make sure that it's not going to cost you anything. There are heaps of options out there where you can set up just a secondary account. Just keep this money separate. We're not going to worry about shopping around, getting the best interest rates and all of that sort of stuff. We can do that later on down the track, but right now, let's just keep this money separate and keep it out of your everyday transaction account. If you try to save in your everyday transaction account, it disappears. So set up a separate savings account for your mini emergency fund. If you haven't done that already, that would be where to start. If you guys have already sort of started, perhaps you are saving up your mini emergency fund. You're in that first step where you're saving $1,000 or $2,000 so that you can then move on to paying off your debt. The idea is just to stay there and just to keep saving. So if you save more than $1,000 or you save more than $2,000, that's fine. That's great, because like I was saying before, we are going to drop back down to those levels after the storm has passed. But for now, just keep saving, keep doing what you're doing. Maybe see if we can tighten the budget a little bit. Maybe start with some frugal living tips and tricks where we sort of can cut back our expenses and our consumption a little bit. But for the main part, we're just going to keep saving and just save and save and save and save. If you're on baby step 2, I would be encouraging you guys to look at your budget, really look at your budget and see if there are any expenses that we can fine tune. Maybe we can cut back a little bit. We are in a unique situation at the moment where those things like eating out and coffee funds and all of those sorts of things, we can probably for the next month or two either do without those and redirect those funds somewhere else, or you know, at least really cut them back. We are in a unique situation, so let's take advantage of that. Let's use it to our advantage to tighten up the budget and just save as much as we possibly can. So baby step 2 in store mode, what you want to be doing is basically the same as baby step 1. We're going to drop back down to our minimum repayments on everything. Stay on top if you can. Obviously, that's the best thing. We don't want to be falling behind at this point. If you have the available funds to remain current, then do that. This is not the time to start enacting the 4 walls if you have enough money to cover all of your minimum repayments and all that sort of stuff. But cut back where you can and stockpile as much as you can, and let's bump that mini emergency fund as high as you can. And basically the same thing if you're on baby step 3 and you're saving your emergency fund. So if you have, say, a 3 months emergency fund, then you probably want to try and kick it up as far as you can. Let's kick it up to 6. So if you are in those further steps, if you're looking at baby steps 4, 5 and 6, or the equivalent in the Scott Pape program where you are essentially saving for your house fund, you're putting extra into your retirement accounts, and you are starting to pay off your house early. The advice coming out of Dave Ramsey headquarters is to pause your additional mortgage repayments if, and this is the important thing, if your emergency fund is less than 6 months. If you've got a 6-month emergency fund and you're in those higher steps, 4, 5 and 6, the advice is just to keep doing what you're doing, because you have that emergency fund to fall back on should things turn badly. And that is where you're going to then want to try and revert back to this bare bones scorched earth budget, which is what we're going to tackle on Monday. And we want to try and make those funds last as long as they can, so we can get through to the other side and then pick up once the dust settles. So just to reiterate, basically, if you're paying off debt or saving a mini emergency fund and you have anything less than 6 months, then the idea is we're just going to hit pause on everything. We're going to cover our minimum requirements. We're going to stay in front. We don't want to fall behind. This is now not the time to start leaning back into debt or getting behind with our repayments, falling behind or anything like that. What we want to do is just keep the ship afloat, so to speak, and stockpile as much as we can. If you find yourself in a situation where you have 6 months of expenses covered, then keep that emergency fund there, but start moving on with whatever step you are in, because we do probably get to the point where we need to be realistic about how much we actually need to save and how long this situation is going to be in effect for. So does that cover sort of everybody's situation so far, or does anybody have a situation that does not fall within one of those categories and you'd like to ask about that and chat about that real quick? If you do, let me know in the comments, and we can talk about those sort of situations. I know things are a bit different for people who are small business owners, and realistically, I'm probably not the best person to ask that advice from, because I'm not a licensed financial planner or advisor. So if you do have specific business questions, unless it's got to do with sort of your budget, your family budgeting and stuff like that as well, probably can't give a lot of advice on that. That is store mode. That is what we are seriously looking at this weekend. Whether or not it's going to be time for us to start enacting that, or if we wait and see how the next 4 weeks go. That's where we're at, guys. And that's real life. That's you know, it is what it is. And I know that for some of you, you guys woke up on Monday morning and found out that you didn't have any hours this week. and a lot of industries have been hit. I know in Australia we're still waiting to see exactly where this kind of ends. I know in Victoria, I didn't catch all of it, but we're talking about stage 3 restrictions. So, you know, it is all very much up in the air. I'm not seeing any more comments go through, so I do apologise if you guys are typing away. Keep typing. If you guys have got any other questions, if there's anything else that you want to chat about while we're here, go ahead and ask if there's anything that I can help you with. Meal planning, what to eat when there's nothing at the supermarket except frozen spinach. I don't know. Or if you just want to have a chat about whatever, go for it. Let's have a chat. Otherwise, I hope you guys all have. I hope you guys have a calm weekend. I hope that the overwhelm doesn't hit you too hard. I hope that you guys are all staying afloat at this point and managing everything. If anybody is in a situation where they are needing to enact the 4 walls and you would like to talk more one-on-one about that and how you do it, and just talk through the process with your actual numbers, then please reach out. I'm more than happy to help you guys where I can at the moment, because I know that it's just really overwhelming. It's really scary, and everything is so unknown. I know that it's so much easier to make a plan for when we know what is going to happen, and at the moment, the most difficult thing about this situation, I think, is the unknown. It's not knowing what's going to happen in the coming weeks, and all we can do really is just band together and support each other as best we can. So if you guys are in that situation where you are finding yourself needing to enact the 4 walls, perhaps you have found out that your hours have been cut, or you've been asked to stand down, and you're not sure what that means for your budget, and the best way to handle your current expenses, then yeah, please feel free to reach out, send me a DM if you want, and we can get together over the weekend and we can have a bit of a chat and look at your actual numbers. We can talk about your 4 walls and create basically what will be a priority-based budget, where you'll just have a list of all of your expenses in order, and you're just going to work your way down the list. But for everybody else, let's get back together on Monday, same time, same back channel, and we will go through the process of creating this priority-based, scorched earth or bare bones budget, even if you don't use it just yet. It's really handy to actually have that, and just to know that you have that plan in place. Even if you aren't quite there yet, at least you're starting to forward plan a little bit, and hopefully that will bring you guys a lot of peace over the weekend as well. Sarah's just said, yes, it absolutely. Sarah said it's the feeling of uncertainty that is creating triggers and stress. And yes, I think we are seeing that all around the place. So everywhere we look at the moment, there are a lot of really scared, really stressed people. And unfortunately, what I'm witnessing is I'm starting to see people in my community, in my hometown, people around me, they're starting to take it out on each other. And it's just really sad, because this is a situation that isn't anybody's fault. Like there was nothing that anybody did to cause this. Nobody deserves this. Everybody is doing the absolute best that they can right now. And some of us have better coping mechanisms than others. And I just think it's really sad when you see people at the supermarket who you have one person, and I'm not excusing this behavior at all, but what I'm saying is you have one person who is really scared and they're doing what they think is the best thing for them, which is stockpiling. They're buying everything that they can, And then you have another person who is abusing them and swearing at them, and because they're scared as well. They're two really scared people. Both of them are trying to deal with this situation the best way that they know how to, and we're starting to get stuck into each other now because of that. It's affecting everybody everywhere. And so the best thing that I think that we can do, the thing that I know that I have the most control over, is keeping myself calm. I don't have control over other people's behaviour. I don't have control over whether or not there's going to be toilet paper when I go to the supermarket. And I don't even have control over that other person who has a trolley full of toilet paper. Really. Most of the time abusing them isn't going to change the situation. But what I do have control over, and what I hope you guys take away from my message, is that the thing that we do have control over is we have control over ourselves and how we respond and how we act. And we have control over our ability to create as much calm as we can in this very overwhelming and very uncertain situation. So I hope the advice that I'm sharing with you guys over these workshops is helping. I hope that it is giving you a little bit of reassurance and a little bit of encouragement that as out of control as this situation feels, and for some of us it is really out of control, and it is out of our control. There are still a few things that we can do, a few things that we can put in place that we can control, and that we have the ability to take back a little bit of control in this situation. And that there are steps that we can take that will, although they're not perfect, they are moving us in a more positive direction, to a more positive outcome. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that helps, guys. If you guys don't have any other questions or anything else you want to chat about today, I'll just quickly, try and scroll back through. I really got to stop touching my face. Has anybody noticed how much they touch their face? It's crazy. Oh, Nikki, it's such a bad habit. Honestly, you got to stop, woman. And my hands are so dry from just washing them constantly. And I just touched my face again. I can't stop it. Sarah has said, be kind, back to the basics. Look after the people in our home and contact those far away and on their own. Make the best of this situation. Absolutely. I couldn't have said that more perfectly. It's just beautiful. And I think that is the message, that if we can get that message out to people, we're going to get through this. We are going to get through this. This is the thing. The human race, our society, our communities, we are going to get through this. This is not the end of days. Although it feels very overwhelming at the moment, this is not the apocalypse. We will get through this. And all we can do is do the best that we can to get through this the best way that we can. And then we will deal with things on the other side. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for spending a bit of your day here with me today. I really do appreciate it. I really am thinking of you guys, and I am hoping that everything is working out on your ends. And like I said, if there is anything that I can help with, please feel free to reach out. And let's do our best just to get through this together and come out the other side as best we can. And hopefully we can even use this situation, even if we're just using it as the excuse to get in and do some of the things that we've been putting off for a long time. So maybe it is that excuse to get in and defrost your freezer and clean it out. Maybe it's, use the time that you've got to do something at home that you've been putting off for a while. Like, maybe now's the time. So things that are going to go onto my to-do list over the coming weeks is I have been meaning to back up my photos for a very long time. And this is something that I can do. And maybe it's just uploading them to Snapfish and I can get them printed off later on or something like that. But using the time, how can I use this period to do something that I've been putting off something that's going to be positive, something that's going to take me to the place where I'm trying to work towards. Maybe it is making those phone calls, finally cutting the crap from your budget, the things that you've been thinking about and you know that you should do it, but finding the time to get on the phone and make those phone calls and get better deals and all that sort of stuff. Maybe now's the time. Maybe this is the thing that gives us all a bit of a kick up the butt to do those things that we've been putting off. So let's put the infrastructure in place now so that moving forward, when this is all over, we can really start to make those really positive steps in our finances and start working towards that financial future that is secure, start building wealth, and start putting ourselves in a situation where, God forbid, we ever find ourselves in a situation like this again, we are not only prepared, but we are debt-free, we have a great emergency fund, and we're in a position where we are able to help other people. And that isn't going to happen now, but if that's the thing that we're all aiming for, I think that's going to create an amazing world down the track. All right, guys, stay safe, wash your hands, don't touch your face. Nikki, that one's for you. And I will see you guys on Monday for another chat. All right, I'll talk to you then. Bye.